Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Air Jordan Zion 4. Interesting shoe. A ton of things I absolutely love about these. A ton of things I absolutely do not love. Let's get into all of them. All right, now starting off in the uppers, a lot of the upper looks pretty basic. It's basically just paneling going all the way through it. The tongue is not gusseted in any way, shape, or form. It's just flapping in the breeze there. It is a little bit more of a beefy tongue though. It's got some pretty thick padding on it. The issue is though, it's a little bit more of a low volume upper, and the lace line, there is no runner's knot in there, but to prevent any heel slippage, you really do have to crank down the laces, because even when I crank down the laces, I can feel slippage all the time, right? Either going those ladder drills, doing some layups, just going around and shooting around. Really, even kind of light play versus more kind of engaged play, you can feel heel slippage. So it's moderate. The thing is, if you lace it down appropriately, if you crank it down, you will not slip out of the shoe. Whereas some shoes, you lace it down really tight, you can still pop out of them. And these ones, you can't because of the low volume nature. That does entail some lace irritation on these. So some moleskin underneath, right where the bend of the tongue is, will go a long way in these to prevent that. That lace irritation was there from the jump, really from first time I used them, even through break-in. So just kind of watch out for that. The fabric in the heel counter and the ankle collar is actually, it's pretty low friction, right? So it doesn't really want to grab. Remember, it is a drop-in midsole, so the rail is a little bit higher. So you're sitting like up a little artificially high in the heel counter anyway. As you go through the rest of the shoe on the inside, it really is just, you know, backed paneling. The lace eyelets, like I said, are integrated. I mean, I guess it's reinforced underneath it, but then it's just fabric over top. And it's got this really interesting layer kind of right where the drag guard is. You look at it on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, the burr does really work through the drag guard, as well as kind of this, it's almost like a black denim type, looking material. It's not black denim, but that's just what it looks like. So, and dragging or sliding, you really are gonna work these things. Now remember, this is an exposed drop-in midsole, but if you look at the breathability test, it only heated up 108.8 degrees, which I thought was fascinating, because as I had the heat gun on the outside of it, peak external temperature really was in the 80s, like mid to low 80s really throughout the whole thing. So you would think, especially with exposed drop-in, it would really heat up under there. Except for the fact that Cushlon just handles heat pretty well, a lot better than other exposed drop-in midsoles. Other exposed drop-in midsoles, I actually think maybe perform a little bit better. The Cushlon just handles the heat so much better. Plus, look at the breathability mapping of these. That really tells the story. Fog is getting out of all the way around the tongue through all the lace eyelets, but also in the forefoot of the shoe. But the other thing is when I had just my hand around the shoe doing the breathability test, you can tell that there was enough heat being dissipated around the entire upper. So although a ton of heat was not getting out, it was, the material was handling it decently enough, which was really surprising when you first look at it. There's not a lot of breathing holes, not a lot of breathing channels. It's just the way the material is set up. It just kind of radiates heat just a little bit better than you think it's going to. Now, getting into the midsole teardown, this is something that Nike was really known for in the tennis space with Zoom Zero, a shoe that the #1 player on the men's side in the world, Yannick Sinner, is still using. He will not get rid of that shoe, even though it's been way discontinued. And that is a full-length parabolic zoom unit. What is that? It's basically just an undulating zoom air unit that moves with the drop of the shoe, the natural drop of the shoe. Now, this one is a zoom strobel as well. It's got all the creases in it for better bending and moving. Now, I thought it would be double thickness in the forefoot, because you look at it from the bottom, you can see the zoom in the forefoot, so it almost looks like there's another landing pad, almost like the Nike GT Run, the original one. But it's not. I cut it perpendicular, and it is still just one unit. You can just see it through the rubber, so that's a little bit of an optical illusion. The drop-in on there is just Cushlon 3.0 drop-in midsole, which is rubberized EVA. The carrier also feels like Cushlon as well. They feel exactly the same. They look exactly the same under the microscope. Honestly, this shoe feels incredibly responsive. There is no shank on it, but it does have a little bit of a lateral plastic container on the side of it. So it's a little bit like some of the Luka shoes, where just strategic plastic for more containment. And remember, full length zoom is also just gonna kind of help hold the shoe up. Look at this thing on the bounce height test. Got 40 centimeters in the rear foot, and then only 35 in the forefoot, which I thought was pretty interesting until I cut it open and realized that, yeah, there's a little bit more volume of that Cushlon drop-in over top of the zoom. Remember, they're not integrated, right? They're not attached to each other. So the ball bearing is seeing a little more influence just from the Cushlon in the forefoot, whereas in the rear foot, Cushlon's a little bit thinner because you have the triple stack of foam, right? The drop in, the zoom, and then the carrier. So you're getting a little more influence of the zoom in the rear foot. I've been getting into the outsole tread, a little bit of a mixture, kind of suction cup patterns on the periphery, then really kind of just gentle, rounded off triangular pattern going all the way through the shoe. And it kind of gets a little more into like linear and then kind of back into the really gentle triangles. I don't even know if you can call them triangles. But yeah, I mean, honestly, traction on these felt very consistent. It is full length tread, which I absolutely love. Look at on the grip test ramp, doesn't slip till 41 degrees. And although they do pick up dust, they are easy enough to wipe down, and I thought traction on these was actually pretty consistent if you didn't mind a periodic wipe down in these. Not super tack, obviously, because like I said, they do pick up a little bit of dust, but as long as you're okay wiping down every so often, it's pretty consistent and it's actually pretty flowing. Like I said, it's full length tread, so you know, you're getting a lot of opportunities for grip, which is nice. And if you look at these things on the speed ratio, coming at a 2.36, Shank score of a big ol' 0, keeps that at a 2.36. I kind of think that's where they belong. You know, at first, they feel incredibly springy, bouncy, just really lively. And a lot of that's, you know, the way the Cushlon and the zoom is stacked. It's the way, you know, the zoom actually follows your arch down the shoe, which is awesome. It's awesome in the Zoom Zeros too. Zoom Zeros of a Shank. It's just over time, like I said, you really only have the lateral container on these. You know, what does that do over time? I'll tell you what though, stopping power in these things is way better than I thought they were gonna be. I mean, it's just this little plastic thing here. And the flange, you know, we'll talk about in the fit section with the inflare of these things, but the flange makes it look even more than it really is because it's such a wide outcropping of the shoe. It kind of just follows the inflare. So it doesn't look like there's a huge flange there. And then you look at the bottom, you look like they're really inflaring, and they are, but a little bit of it is optical illusion from how wide the lateral side is. So honestly, for a shoe with, you know, a Cushlon insert in the forefoot that has to be a little bit thicker because you got zoom basically touching the ground, right? You have to fill it in somewhere to get the normal heel to toe drop of the shoe. And then you got a zoom strobel underneath of that, so there's not a ton of proprioception. I still thought they had really good feel and really good stopping power. That was a pleasant surprise in these things. Also another pleasant surprise was you look at the outsole durability test, 10-second tie grit sandpaper, not even a millimeter of damage on these things, and this is really thin, narrow rubber. I still don't think they're great for outdoor courts. I still think they're gonna get beat up. But if you're someone that's low friction, just going around for shoot-arounds, I think they're okay on indoor courts. For rubber this thin, the durometer on these I think is high enough that I think that they'll do okay. Like I said, it is still very thin rubber, so there's not a lot to go, but it is nice to see that at least from my burr, at least it resisted it pretty well even with that thin rubber. All right, but where this review comes to a screeching halt is the fit. Once again, like the Zion 2s, these things have some wild numbers attached to them in terms of fit. Number one, they come in at a 17-degree inflare, which is up there. I mean, I had to measure this thing a bunch of times to make sure I was doing that correctly, not taking into account the lateral flange. It's 17 degrees, you feel it on foot. The good thing is they don't feel as unforgiving as the Zion 3s in terms of width, what in some aspects they do. Now, in terms of the resting position, they have 2-degree everted resting position that goes to 3 degrees with loading. So they're pretty stable. Like I said, it is a pretty flat to the ground, full length tread pattern, so you would expect that. However, I would also expect that to get worse and worse as the shoe breaks in and breaks down because there's no shank doing anything to that. Like I said, the heel counter it's fine, it's stiff enough. It's just the rest of the shoe I think is gonna be pretty flexible over time. Now these come in at only 28.6 centimeters in length, 9.2 centimeters of metatarsal width, which actually isn't that terrible, and then 9.7 centimeters of toe box width and the toe box taper of a whopping 30 degrees. Obviously with a drop-in though, you're gonna lose space and length because it has to curl up and fit into the shoe, right? It has to be the insert. Plus on the sides, these rails are also gonna, you know, decrease the amount of usable space in the drop-in. 9.2 centimeters metatarsal width, honestly, I mean, it's not super forgiving. It's not terrible. It's more narrow to medium. And I honestly did not have a problem in the metatarsals. Number one, because the uppers of the shoe actually break in okay. They're, like I said, a little bit more forgiving, especially than the 3s with the buckles, the plastic, and everything else that just makes it super unforgiving. The problem is going into the toe box. This is the stuff that gives like barefoot shoe wearers nightmares. And let me tell you, you feel it. You feel the low volume nature of the forefoot. even if it isn't like super uncomfortable for some people, you just can't get around how narrow the forefoot in these things is. I would say though, if you're a narrow medium foot, I think you go true to size because of the heel slip and not having to crank down the laces. If you're medium and you want a little bit more room in there and you don't mind cranking down the laces, then you go up a half size. A 2E, I'd be going up a size in these things. A 4E, if you can fit them, I'd be going up one size in these things as well. That just might be a mismatch. Like I said, the good thing is that they're short in terms of usable space. The bad thing is that space is being taken up by foam in the drop-in. So it's still, like, the length is still there, right? So the shoe is still gonna feel a little more floppy. So just take, like I said, just take all that in consideration when you're buying them. This is still more of a narrow and medium foot shoe. A 2E can get into them. Is it gonna be comfortable in the toe box or not? And how much is that gonna break in over time? That's the question. In terms of people I would be recommending these for, once again, narrow-footed people that want a little bit more of a glove-like fitting shoe. Yeah, for sure. Once again, same as the Zion 3. This is a great narrow fitting shoe for people. And also for a drop-in shoe with no shank, bouncy, quick, nimble, feels really fun underfoot to play in. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a really, really fun shoe. I think the thing I liked most about it was the feel. Was the feeling underfoot, how it moved around the court, how nimble it felt, how stable it felt for how nimble it is and kind of how low profile the shoe is. It's just that it's the certain foot types, it's heavier players that are just gonna pummel through this, right? Because there's really nothing load sharing, there's no shank in these things. I think that's what's gonna do it. Yeah, zoom is gonna protect the shoe a little bit more, give you a little bit more longevity, but bending that zoom unit over and over and over and over and over again, and the twisting action back and forth when you're stopping the shoe. And like I said, there is this plastic piece there. Like I said, it does an outsized job for what it is, and I think it's the plastic piece combined with the fact that it's more of a flat to the ground shoe, more flat tread profile. So it is more stable than you think it's going to be. It's just, like I said, what's that gonna do long term? But if you want a really fun, bouncy, nimble, just quick feeling shoe underfoot, yeah, actually, a really fun shoe. I kind of think of these and the Under Armour Flow Future X Elite kind of in that same category, just a super fun shoe to play in. So I think there's gonna be a lot of people that really like them. I do, I really do. I think some people are gonna, just honestly be opted out of them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, especially if you really were a believer in the Zion 3s versus the 1s and the 2s. I know for me, the 1s and the 2s, I loved. The 3s and the 4s, I feel like, are just getting into like a different line of shoes. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that really is, like I said, up to you. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And if you want to see what Nike's up to in their next generation line, the newest iteration of that, the Nike Next Genesis, which has a whole ton of changes from the Next Gen and the Next Gen Amped, make sure you click into this video up above, subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. See you soon on the Sneakerverse.